Good morning, students. Let us continue with the next topic of chapter number 18, body fluids and circulation. Human circulatory system. Human circulatory system, also called the blood vascular system, consists of a muscular chambered heart, a network of closed branching blood vessels and blood. The fluid which is circulated. Heart, the mesodermally derived organ, situated in the thoracic cavity between the two lungs. Slightly tilted to the left, it has the size of clenched fist. It is protected by double-walled membranous bag, pericardium, enclosing the pericardial fluid. Our heart has four chambers, two relatively small upper chambers called atria and two larger lower chambers called ventricles. A thin muscular wall called the interatrial septum separates the right and left atria, whereas a thick-walled interventricular septum separates the right and left ventricles. See, between the atria it is a very thin septum, but between ventricles it is very thick, because when atria squeezes out blood with a great pressure enters the ventricle, and hence thick wall is required. The atrium and the ventricle of the same side are also separated by a thick fibrous tissue called the atrioventricular septum. However, each of these septa are provided with an opening through which the two chambers of the same side are connected. The opening between the right atrium and the right ventricle is guarded by a valve formed of three muscular flaps or cusp, hence called as tricuspid valve, whereas a bicuspid or mitral valve guards the opening between the left atrium and the left ventricle. So right side it is tricuspid RT, while left side it is bicuspid LB. The opening of the right and the left ventricle into the pulmonary artery and the aorta respectively are provided with the semilunar valves. The valves in the heart allows to flow the blood only in one direction, that is from atria to ventricles and from ventricles to the pulmonary artery or aorta. These valves prevent any backward flow. Here is the section of human heart. We can see the four chambers very clearly. Right atrium connected with the right ventricle, left atrium connected with the left ventricle, aorta, the big red artery, vena cava, the big blue vein. The muscles bundle of His responsible for the generation of impulse and spread the impulse to the various parts of the heart. The entire heart is made of cardiac muscles. The walls of ventricles are much thicker than that of atria. A specialized cardiac musculature called the nodal tissue is also distributed in the heart. A patch of this tissue is present in the right upper corner of the right atrium called the sinoatrial node SAN. Another mass of tissue is seen in the lower left corner of the right atrium close to the atrioventricular septum called the atrioventricular node, that is AVN. A bundle of nodal fibers, atrioventricular bundle AV bundle, continues from the AVN which passes to the AV septa to emerge on the top of the interventricular septum and immediately divides into the right and left bundles. These branches give rise to minute fibers throughout the ventricular musculature of the respective sides and are called Purkinje fibers. These fibers are meant of distributing the impulse over the heart so that all the muscles can work together. The nodal musculature of the heart has the ability to generate action potentials without any external stimuli. Hence, it is the auto-excitable organ. बाहर से किसी स्टिमुलस की इन्हें ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती और इसीलिए इन्हें auto-excitable कहा जाता है. However, the number of action potential that could be generated in a minute vary at different parts of the nodal system. The SAN can generate maximum number of action potential, that is 70 to 75 per minute, and it is responsible for initiating and maintaining the rhythmic contractile activity of the heart. Therefore, it is called pacemaker. Pacemaker का काम होता है impulse generate करके हार्ट को कॉन्ट्रैक्ट कराना, और ये सबसे ज़्यादा एफिशिएंटली SAN कर सकता है और इसीलिए उसे पेसमेकर कहा जाता है. Our heart normally beats 70 to 75 times in a minute, average 72 beats per minute. Next topic is cardiac cycle. How does the heart function? Let us take a look. To begin with, all the four chambers of the heart are in relaxed state, that is, they are in joint diastole. See, relaxed state is diastole and contractile stage is systole. As the tricuspid and bicuspid valves are open, blood from the pulmonary veins and vena cava flows into the left and right ventricle, respectively, through the left and right atria. The semilunar valves are closed at this stage. The SAN now generates an action potential which stimulates both atria to undergo a simultaneous contraction and the atrial systole. This increases the flow of blood into the ventricles by about 30%. The action potential is conducted to the ventricular side by AVN and AV bundle, from where the bundle of His transmits it through the entire ventricular musculature. This causes the ventricular muscles to contract. Ventricular systole. The atria undergoes relaxation, that is diastole, coinciding with the ventricular systole. So, one time it is diastole and one time it is systole. Ventricular systole increases the ventricular pressure, causing the closure of the tricuspid and the bicuspid valves due to attempted backflow of the blood into the atria. As the ventricular pressure increases further, the semilunar valves guarding the pulmonary artery right side and the aorta left side are forced open, allowing the blood to the ventricles to flow through these vessels into the circulatory pathways. The ventricles now relax, that is ventricular diastole, and the ventricular pressure falls, causing the closure of the valves, which prevents the backflow of the blood again into the ventricles. As the ventricular pressure declines further, tricuspid and bicuspid valves are pushed open by the pressure in the atria exerted by the blood, which are being emptied into them by veins. The blood now once again moves freely to the ventricles. Ventricles and atria are now again in a relaxed, that is joint diastole state as earlier. Soon the SAN generates a new action potential and the events described above are repeated in that sequence and the process continues. This sequential event in the heart, which is cyclically repeated, is called cardiac cycle. It consists of systole and diastole of both atria and ventricle. As mentioned earlier, heart beats 72 times in a minute. That is, the cardiac cycle are performed per minute. From this, it could be deduced that the duration of the cardiac cycle is 0.8 seconds. When we divide 60 seconds by 72, we obtain 0.8. During a cardiac cycle, each ventricle pumps out approximately 70 ml of blood. This is known as stroke volume. The stroke volume is multiplied by the number of beats and we get the cardiac output. It is about 5000 ml or 5 liters in a healthy individual per minute. The body has the ability to alter the stroke volume as well as the heart rate and thereby the cardiac output also. For example, cardiac output of an athlete will be much higher than that of an ordinary man. During each cardiac cycle, two prominent sounds are produced which can be easily heard through a stethoscope. First is heart sound. Lub is associated with the closure of tricuspid and bicuspid valves, whereas the second heart sound, dub, is associated with the closure of semilunar valves. These sounds are of great clinical diagnostic significance.